So good evening again, everybody. My name is Kate Breslaw, and I'm an advanced certified EFT practitioner, a highly sensitive therapist and advocate, and the founder of An Integrated Life. The EFT, the tapping, we're going to talk about in a lot more detail in a couple of minutes. So just to address what else I do, I run day retreats and foraging and things like this all come under the cover of An Integrated Life, which is why we have these lovely pictures at the bottom. I love foraging, and these are some beautiful dishes that I made with a friend. So this is me foraging here at the bottom. So just basically about me. Let's move on. Let's talk about what is EFT. So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. And I've actually highlighted the S there because sometimes people just call it Emotional Freedom Technique. We call it techniques because within EFT, we do have a few different techniques that we can use. It's also known as tapping and often more commonly known as tapping. Why do we call it tapping? Because that's exactly what we're doing. We're using our fingers to tap on specific energy points in our body whilst we're bringing to consciousness and vocalizing how we feel. So we're literally saying what we feel as we tap around the points. It's worth noting that, it's worth noting that we can actually tap silently. It's used as a trauma technique in a lot of countries around the world for children. So you can tap on the points and not say anything, and you'll still get the benefits, which we'll talk about shortly. Where did it come from? It was founded by someone called Gary Craig in 1995. He took a technique or a method that was developed by someone called Roger Callahan called thought field therapy, TFT. It was the same principle, but it was tapping on different points of the body and specific orders of points depending on what you wanted to work on, whether it was for pain or disease or whatever it was. He had specific points for specific ailments. Gary Craig simplified it for us all, and we just used the same 8 points or 8 or 9 points, and we use the same points regardless of what we're working with. So those are the basics of tapping. Why do we even want to tap? People have talked about it as this woo-woo technique, we're just sort of tapping on these strange parts of our body. What are we actually doing? The science has proved it, that when we tap on these points, for anyone who does know more about acupuncture, we're using some of the endpoint meridian points. We are sending a message to our brain directly. It affects the amygdala and it calms us. Our amygdala being part of the brain that's responsible for a lot of our emotional reactivity. So the first thing tapping does, it calms our nervous system. Depending on what you're using tapping for, and we'll discuss this shortly, whether you're self-tapping or whether you're working with a practitioner, we can then clear whatever it is that's bothering us. And by doing that, we change the way we feel, think, behave, and respond. And 1 hour of tapping can change 72 genes in your body. This is from some of the research by Dr. Peter Stapleton. She's not coming from the woo-woo spiritual angle. She actually won the award for Best Psychologist of the Year or Top Psychologist of the Year in Australia, and I think it was 2019. So she's coming from a scientific background. She's responsible for most of the research. And we're really grateful to her that we can actually have research now to back up what we see with the tapping. So let's look at exactly how we can tap. In general, we've got 2 aspects to tapping. We've got tapping for self-care, and then we've got tapping with a practitioner. So tapping for self-care, it helps you relieve your stress and feel better in the moment. So the sort of examples you could use it for, maybe it's just me, but I've got a feeling not just me as entrepreneurs, overwhelm. I don't know if when you wake up in the morning, you feel good, and by the time you sit down at your table or your office, you're looking at your list of things to do and whether you've got it to that 3 things to do or your side list of 10, just overwhelming the amount of things you've got to do. Where do you start? So we could use tapping to reduce that overwhelm, to have much more clarity, and simply then move on with the task that we have for the day. You could also use it if you're lacking confidence in a particular area or for an issue. Let's say you've got a client call coming up and you've got that nervousness or anxiousness about, am I good enough or whatever. You can again literally do a couple of rounds of tapping and it will reduce the anxiety. You'll feel calmer and you'll be able to operate more efficiently. Again, anxious or nervous before an event. I decided I'd do a couple of rounds of tapping before tonight. There's that sort of energy bubbling around. So I did a couple of rounds of tapping just to stay calm and be in the moment. Tapping when you work with a practitioner. So when you're working with a practitioner, you're able to get deeper into the issues of what's troubling you to be able to resolve them. So when you're working with a practitioner, say, for example, myself or another practitioner, we're able to help you tap into the specific challenge, discover the root cause and clear the issue, enabling you to make lasting changes. Giving more examples of what that might look like, and I'm sure it's come up a lot in discussions with Natalie in the mindset channel that she has, limiting or false beliefs. I'm not good enough, no one will pay me this much, maybe imposter syndrome. Again, if you haven't listened to Natalie's podcast from today, she talked about our relationship with money. And I'll give you an example, a personal example of mine, of how I've worked both on myself and with a practitioner in a minute. Again, lack of clarity. Let's say you have some big decisions or maybe even small decisions to make for your business. Sometimes we're blocked by things, and whereas you could just self-tap to reduce the nervousness or anxiety, when you're working with the practitioner, we can help you get to the core of the issue, and then we can help you resolve it. Fear of failure or even fear of success, also both issues that we as entrepreneurs face, and tapping can help you release the emotional charge and even release the issue itself. Okay, what do clients say? How did it help them? So I had a client and he was trying to move forward with his business, but he was stuck on a certain issue. First of all, I have to say I can't talk in too much detail about my clients. These are testimonials I've been given, but I do have to be careful with regards to confidentiality. My personal experiences I can tell in more detail. So Chris was stuck with an issue and he couldn't move forward with his business because this issue kept reoccurring and he just couldn't work out why. So through the tapping, we managed to find out where this issue was coming from, the source of this issue. It happened to be something that he'd been told many years ago in a job when he worked for someone else. And that thought, he was much younger then, it had just stuck to him. It was a belief that he'd created about himself. He hadn't even connected it to the problem until we started the tapping. And by doing the tapping, we helped him shift the problem and he was able to move forward with his business. I had another client and she contacted me. She was also self-employed. And this time she had been triggered by a traumatic event that had happened 10 years earlier. Something had caused the issue to come to surface. She realized she hadn't dealt with it and it had completely taken over her life. She couldn't function in her business. She was very, very emotional. And through the tapping, we were able to address the trauma that she'd experienced. And she was then able to see both herself and her business in a different light. She was able to release the emotions and simply get back to actually functioning and working with clients. And she does say at the end, I'm a magician. I used to be, when I was in England, I was a children's party entertainer and I did magic. I'm not a magician, it's the tapping that does the work. And then I had another client who came to me for just one session, Nemi Zelwa. She was happy to actually use her name in full name. And she just had concerns about her business. And she didn't really know, just a lot of confusion in what she wanted to do with a particular issue. And through the tapping, we were able to get to the core of the issue. And she was able to then understand what her challenges were and why what her thought processes were. We were able to help her clear the concerns. And from that place, she was then able to make the decisions and the right decisions for her that she needed for her business. Okay, why do we tap on the negative? I'm going to leave that slide up for a moment, and I'm just going to talk to you just for a minute about a personal experience, because I think it can, being personal, I can share more details, and I think it makes it much clearer. Certainly as self-employed people, our issues around money can affect our business. And I'd spent a lot of time tapping on myself. I grew up with family, money was tight, things were hard, and these were sentences that had stuck in my mind. Through self-tapping, I was able to clear a lot of those issues. But even I, as a practitioner, needed help when I wanted to get to deeper aspects of the issue. And even only a few weeks ago, I was tapping with a fellow practitioner. And for example, so you can understand how tapping works, I had a memory. And I wasn't even sure if it was my own memory or a story I'd heard. It was something that happened around the age of 6 years old, but I felt it had had a serious effect on me. And I asked her if we could tap on the memory, and I just imagined I'd experienced it and seen it, even though I didn't know if I had. And somehow through the tapping, we came up with the awareness that for me, I had this idea in my head, it's safer not to have. So there I was thinking I'd resolved all my money issues and what's stopping me from moving forward and growing my business. But there were still issues there. So that's the difference between working on yourself or just doing self-care work and working with a practitioner. The practitioner can help you get to deeper levels of shifting limiting beliefs. Now, coming to the slide, why do we tap on the negative? You'll see when we start to tap together that when we start, and even when we're tapping around the points, we say the negative. I'm feeling really angry. I'm overwhelmed. I'm stressed. I'm angry. And for most people, especially in recent years when there's been such high emphasis placed on be positive, think positive, check, work on your mindset. The idea of tapping is that first thing we need to do is accept how we feel. And that's why we tap on the negative. By accepting how we feel and stating it and tapping around the points, it's often enough to shift the problem and to change how we feel. My favorite analogy, which is the one that's on the slide, is if I cut my hand and the piece of glass is still in my hand, I don't have to say or think or feel anything positive about it. All I have to do is remove the glass and the healing happens. And that's the idea of why we say negative statements in tapping rather than positive. There are people, and it's becoming more and more common, that do something called positive EFT. And that's more when we're tapping around the points and people are saying positive affirmations. Now, I don't know if you've talked about it or if you use them yourselves, whether you have a list of positive affirmations or mantras that you like to say for your business. Even if you do, you can use them and you can tap, and it can help internalize them and create new neural pathways in your brain. It's not the classical EFT which we're using to tap on the negative to release the issues. So that's why we tap on the negative. Here's kind of what I specialize in, I guess: inner calm, healing, and self-growth. And you have my phone number here. Here's my Facebook page. And I'd like to just add something about healing. If anyone has gone through certain trauma, and I know some of you have worked with trauma, I'm still not convinced, and I'm not sure we ever do really heal completely if we have had serious trauma or we've gone through it. But for me, healing is about we're able to respond differently. So we might still get triggered by things sometimes, but we're able to relate to them and respond differently. And I think that's the secret, and that's what healing is about, that it doesn't send us into fight, flight, freeze, fawn, all the other words that have been added to it, that we're still able to function and function in a better way. And tapping is really great for this. It's basically, it helps us regulate our emotions. While this is on the screen, I'll just say that I am offering for all of you and anybody who's not in the call tonight, you're welcome to contact me for a free 20-minute call if you'd like to know whether it's more about tapping, more about highly sensitive people, or how tapping can help you in your life or in your business. And I'm also offering, when we speak, I'll also offer you a special discount that I put together for anyone working with Natalie in Natalie's tribe for September. So when we're ready, let's tap.